And they were like, oh, how can a 5-year-old child go insane? Okay, they were terrified. And they're like,
Stephen,
are you
I'm,
scared? And I'm
I'm
like, no, I'm not scared. It's really cool. He really makes me feel better. I like him. Well, it wasn't until decades later that I realized that was my dad, who had been there to comfort me through that. And as I grew up, I was always fascinated by movies that people would call fantasy movies, but I consider to be very spiritual movies, like Lost Horizons, like It's a Wonderful Life, The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, and things like that. I was always fascinated by it. My father was a producer and a director in the 40s and made a lot of movies with big comedians, Abbott Costello and Red Skelton, which a lot of people today aren't going to remember who they were. And then when my mother remarried, she remarried another film producer. So there was no question in my mind that I came here to put spiritual topics into films. That has been my commitment to do in this lifetime. And that started with reading a book called Bid Time Return, knowing that I needed to get into the film industry to make that into a film, begging my way into a job with a wonderful producer named Ray Stark, who let me be his assistant. And I called the writer, Richard Matheson, on my first day of work. We got together and I said, I have no idea how to produce a movie yet, but when I do, this is going to be my first movie. Will you give me some time? And we shook hands, and 3 years later, that became Somewhere in Time, which is a film that really, when it came out, was pretty eviscerated by the critics and did very poorly, bombed at the box office, was around for 3 weeks, and then disappeared. Broke my heart. I grew this because I stayed in my house for a long time. And it really was shattering to me because I thought we had made a really classic, beautiful love story. There is a long tale about how that movie finally came into the public view, but it did. And now it has quite a following, and it's very gratifying to me. When we were prepping Somewhere in Time, Richard gave me the galleys to his next novel, which was called What Dreams May Come. And when I read that novel, I thought, okay, I have to make this too. So I remember saying to Richard, I promise you it won't take me 3 years this time to get this movie made. And I was right. It took almost 20. And that is an incredibly long saga. I never gave up on it. There were times I had to put it on the shelf for a while because it just wasn't the right time. They are movies that I am deeply, deeply proud of. I also produced and directed the Conversations with God movie for my dear friend Neil Donald Walsh, founded a company called the Spiritual Cinema Circle, where we sent out 4 uplifting films to our subscribers every month for 16 years until Netflix made it kind of impossible for us to go forward because they were the 600-pound gorilla. And it all led to the book that you mentioned, What Dreams Have Come, which I wrote with my wife starting about 8 months after she had transitioned to the other side of the veil. Um, the story behind that is that Lauren, while she was here physically, and it continues on the other side, was an intuitive, a therapist, a medium. She was very, very sensitive to all of the energies that obviously attracted me. And Lauren and I talked for a long time about, well, when the first of us crosses over, the other one has to let the other one know that they're okay and come back and be there for the surviving spouse, which is the best way to put it. To the point where in the last year of her life, her physical life, Lauren said to me, we have to design our afterlife, honey, because we both believe in the, there's an old saying that I'll see it when I believe it. Well, R was I'll believe it. I'm sorry. I always get that up backwards. I'll see it when I believe it, not I'll believe it when I see it. And it has always been our concept, which is the concept of what dreams may come, that we all design this according to our own belief system, which is why Robin wound up in this world of wet paint because his wife was a painter and that was comforting for him. And Cuba Gooding, as his guide and as his son said to him, Well, we all paint our own surroundings here. You're the only one that's ever used real paint. Um, we had that agreement with each other. And Lauren was 17 years younger than me. So we both thought it was going to be me. And on the morning of January 3rd, 2018, I found her in the morning and she had transitioned in her sleep, which then sent me into PTSD and the deepest kind of grief that I could ever imagine, because it was shocking to me. When Lauren was still physical, and we still talk about this a lot, we realized that we had been together in many, many lifetimes. I mean, going back not just centuries, millennia, not every lifetime, but a lot of different lifetimes, and that we made a deal before we came here that this was going to be our last incarnation here, and that once we both were on the other side, we were going to stay there. Now, I always put a little asterisk on that, which is that's unless Lauren decides we're coming back again. and if she does, I have said to her, honey, you know, whatever you want to do, we'll do. But if we do come back, I have some details that have to be taken care of. We have to be born next door to each other. We have to meet when we are infants. And we have to be homeschooled by one of our mothers. And we need to be together because I can't do this again. I can't be separated from you again. And these conversations started and kept up until we finally came up with the whole idea of writing the book together. So there's a lot of stuff within there. I'm going to stop here for a second and say, is there any place you want me to kind of go into and talk a little bit about more?
Yeah, I just had something to say, if that's okay, Jess. I really I've read the book a few times, and here's what the book looked like for everybody. And it's just full of so much love and joy and connection. And of course, everybody that knows who I am and the seed movement, my own afterlife experience, everything is connection. Everything is about connection. We're all trying to connect on the planet at this pivotal time. And I love that you wrote this with so much love in your heart, but also I am so delighted when you wrote this in your deepest, darkest grief, you included everyone. So it's like, this is literally, if you are grieving and you've lost somebody, this is the book for you because it is so comforting. And I love that you don't, because we do something as a society, we always tell people like, oh, you're going to be okay. And you don't even sugarcoat it. You're like, this is awful. This feels so awful. And it's okay. It's okay to feel so lost and so disconnected and just so lonely for that, the loving soul, your beloved. And I really, really love that you guys, well, that you've written your heart there and then also joined her so that you both can tell a story, which is reality. And I know this for certain, that we really don't have to say goodbye, that we are eternal. And so just thank you for that. Like, I'm seriously, my heart just lit up reading this book. And I just want to say thank you.
Oh, I so appreciate that, Lynette. Thank you, because it is important that people not deny their hearts. When someone you love, and it doesn't have to be your soulmate, your twin flame. It can be a mother, a father, God forbid, a son or a daughter. Someone that is that close to you, of course you're going to grieve. Mm-hmm. And grieving sucks. It just does. It sucks. It's really hard. However, and this is something that we do really try to get through in the book, you have to let your heart feel what it feels. We have a quote in the book from a movie, which is, the heart is a mysterious organ. It plays by its own rules. Mm-hmm. When I was in the depth of my grief, I called one night my dear friend, Neil Donald Walsh, who, as I said, wrote the Conversations with God series of books. And Neil and I had become dear friends over the years. And I was crying so hard that I couldn't speak. And Neil, in his inimitable way, just sat quietly until I could get something out of my mouth. And I finally said to him, Neil, I'm out of my mind with grief. And Neil said, good, Stephen. That's good. You need to be out of your mind and in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, did that ever resonate with me, because the heart is the repository of all of our feelings. Our soul communicates to us through our heart. Our
Yeah.
heart feels things that cannot be put into words. When people say, well, I had this feeling, but I can't really come up with a word, that's because there's no word for it. It's a feeling. There isn't an appropriate word for it. And I have known people that have lost dear loved ones who buried themselves in work and tried to not think about it. And
Mm-hmm.
almost to a person, when that happens, it comes up later and it just overwhelms you like a tidal wave.
Mm-hmm.
You have to feel it.
Yeah.
But, but you do learn to live with it. You do learn to live with it. It is not something that you get over and move on. If it is, if it's somebody you know and you care about, and it's not that kind of eternal connection, that's something else. But if it is somebody that is that close to you, like Lauren is to me, I never am going to get over that, nor do I ever want to get over that. But I've learned to live with it. And we laugh a lot now. I can enjoy things in my life now. I can enjoy our children, our grandchildren. I have a lot of things that please me in my life. If you allow yourself to feel it while you're going through it, then eventually it will come out to the other side. And we talk a lot about that in the book. And I think one of the things that you'll find in the book, and this was an idea from a dear friend of mine who I asked to help me edit the book. She was the only person that read it before we published it. She looked at it and she said, and she and Lauren were very, very close friends, and she's still connected to Lauren on the other side as well. She said, Stephen, you need to put whatever Lauren says in a different font
Mm-hmm.
so that it's very specifically her. So what had happened with the two of us is that when Lauren finally did connect with me, I say finally, it was 6 weeks. And some people say, well, how long is it? And the answer is it's different for everybody. It can be hours. I've known people that have been in touch within hours, within minutes. It can be days, it can be weeks, it can be months. It depends somewhat on the person on the other side's life review and a lot of other things which I don't really know right now, all the details of. But when she finally did get through to me, and I'm not going to go through the moment because it's in the book and it's better described there, people have asked me, well, did you hear her voice? And the answer is yes, but not through my ears. I
Mm-hmm.
felt and heard her voice in my heart. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that that is confusing for people. Again, that's learning the language of the heart because I knew it was Lauren. However, I questioned it for months, and I mean months. I would be, oh, okay, am I making this up just to comfort myself because I can't deal with the trauma of her being there and me being here? As a friend of mine said, Stephen, a bunch of people think you're several tacos short of a combination plate, which I thought was a great phrase. And I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. And they can. But in my heart, I know that this is my wife. You're going to find people that doubt that in your life, and that's okay. It's completely okay. I can tell you that since we published this book ourselves on Amazon, which is the only place you can get it, I've received at least a couple of thousand emails from people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's from all over the world. It's maybe 25, 30 different countries, all saying the same thing. Oh my goodness, I'm glad you're bringing this up because I don't have anybody to talk to about this. People in my life think that I've lost my mind. Um, you haven't. I don't know the reasons for it. I don't. But somehow or another, this veil has thinned over
Yeah.
the years. And we now are capable, and it could be we've been capable of it for a long time, and just some of us are coming to the consciousness that we can do it. You're not alone. And I think one of the major, major reasons why we wrote the book is to be comforting to people and say, no, you're not alone in this experience.
Yeah.
I do want to say something about that too, and then I'll be quiet here for a minute. Um, if someone is watching this with us and you want to be in touch with me, to let me know what your experience was, go to our website, which is whatdreamshavecome.com. Don't go to whatdreamsmaycome.com. That's the movie. Whatdreamshavecome.com. There you will find a link to the book, and you will also find my email address. This is very important to Lauren and to myself, for people to be able to share their own experiences. If you do that, I promise you this. Number one, I will respond. Number two, no one sees these emails besides me. No one has access to them, and no one ever will see them. Somebody said to me one time, well, are you compiling stories for another book? Answer, no, there will not be another book, and I will never expose these stories to anybody else. I only ask two things. One, depending on how many emails I get, it may take me up to a week to get back to you. My delays have been that long. Sometimes I spend 6 hours a day doing this. The other thing is, and I know people are curious about, people have written scripts and have ideas for movies. I'm retired from the film industry. I'm retired from producing. I've read maybe, I think in my lifetime, in my career, maybe 12 to 15,000 scripts, which sounds crazy, but I did this for 45 years. I'm not reading scripts anymore. And I have no connections anymore with anybody in Hollywood. I left there 20 years ago. I retired from producing several years ago. So I cannot help you with your script. But if you have a story you want to tell, please, please, please be in touch with me and I will respond.
Yeah, it's beautiful team play. Like you're really this is the new earth qualities and the new earth energies is inviting and having everyone sort of become part of like this extremely magical experience. And this team play energetic, we're very familiar, Justin and I, and it is the way of the future. So just thank you again, just opening your heart and allowing those people to express themselves. And that's so healing in itself. I think we have a question on this topic, Justin. One of them.
The question concerning.
I thought while Stephen was talking, I heard one of the questions that we jotted down for him from somebody.
Well, we had the question concerning what you mentioned, and I loved how you talk about how the switch between I'll see it when I believe it from I'll believe it when I see it. It's so perfect because it's really indicative of this inner feminine side of ourselves, which is that openness, that is the heart-led space, that is the right hemisphere of the brain. And that's truly the connection point to God, because this is what allows us to be open to receiving. So we have to be in that state of reception, that state of surrender, asking to receive. So I love how you phrase it that way. So I guess one of the questions we got was, what are some of the feelings when you are in that state of openness? What are some of the feelings you get from Lauren, or how did that process sort of come about? I know you said there's a lot more detail in the book, but maybe just a brief overview of like, what are some of those feelings that you get when you're experiencing her?
Well, I think all of us who have these connections through the veil, I shouldn't say all because everybody has their own experience, but I think most of us, because I can discuss this with a lot of other people, there is a very specific tell that I know when Lauren wants me to know that she's here. She has also let me know that she does quick check-ins from time to time and doesn't put her energy in the space around me. So I'm not as aware that she's here. When we did connect, and all of these conversations we wrote about, but when we did really first start connecting, Lauren said to me, honey, I will be with you every single day, your day, because time is very different where she is. I'll be with you every single day until you cross over. I promise you, I will every single day. She also let me know that when we planned this lifetime, and I want to say something about that I think hopefully will be some fun for people. When we planned this lifetime, she said we had very heated discussions about who was going to leave and who was going to stay here. And we were both adamant because we both knew that the person who was still here was going to go through a really rough period of adjustment and grieving. And I knew what she was getting at. And I finally said, honey, thank you for letting me win. Because I would not be at all comfortable if she was the one having this experience. And it thrilled me to death. And when I, bad phrase, thrilled me to life. When I said we made these plans, a spiritual teacher of mine once described for me the afterlife experience in a metaphor that I've always used, and I hope will be helpful to people. So we're between lives. We decide we're going to have another incarnation. So it's like, here's the metaphor, it's like going out to a running track in the morning, and we set up hurdles that we feel we need to get over during our lives that we're going to learn from. And we set the hurdles up at a particular height with distance in between them and stuff like that, because we know these are all the things that we need to accomplish in life. Then we're born, and we completely forget that we did that. And we start running around the track and get really pissed off at the idiot who put the hurdles so close together and so high, forgetting that is us. That is what we believe happens when you go through this experience. And the other thing is that I get asked a lot about this. Well, what is the afterlife like? Unanswerable question. Unanswerable question. Because my dear friend Richard Matheson had a wonderful, wonderful phrase that he gave me in calligraphy that I still have on my wall. That which you think becomes your world. Which is a beautiful way of phrasing it. We have so many different beliefs on planet Earth about what happens after life. There cannot possibly be a uniform answer. Everyone gets what they expect to get, what your beliefs tell you. And how beautiful is that? A writer, I think his name is James Monroe, said, we can, in the afterlife, we can choose on islands to live on islands of consensual realities, where people who have the same feelings and beliefs about that can be in conjunction with each other. But Judaism, Catholicism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, all have different feelings about what happens after life. Who is to say? Some people do, and I think it's unfortunate. Well, you may have something that you believe, but what I believe is not only true for me, but it's true for you whether you like it or not. How appalling is that? How really, truly appalling is that, to try to disqualify people's beliefs? So I can't really answer that. I know the afterlife experience that Lauren and I created when she went into trance that night, and I wrote everything down. I know what that is, but I don't know what anybody else's experience is going to be. And I hope that that will be encouraging to people, that you don't have to be worried that you're going to be surprised, because it's going to be what you believe it's going to be.
It's also a real gateway into getting into the heart, because if you can create from the heart, then it's going to be, also from that third eye, because that's where the connection is. And it's literally your wildest, most incredible dreams is what you're creating. Everything that you want to see. And this was my experience as well, right? And so to getting into the heart.
That's why the movie was called What Dreams May Come.
Yes. Yes. So beautiful.
Yeah. And
I think there's another question there too, Justin.
Yeah. Which one? Sorry, I'm not.
There was another one
about the.
I can't look on my phone because I'm using my phone to Zoom.
Okay, is it the one about? So this was from a dear woman who asked about the perception of feelings from the other side, and she asked, could it be that we have these experiences in uh, like when we're experiencing communication from the other side, could it be that when we are in the light of day or perhaps under starlight, that's why this manifestation of feeling comes into being? Could it be, does it have, do you feel like, or have you communicated with Lauren that it has something to do with the light itself?
I don't know. You know, that for me, that has not been my personal experience, but it could also very much well be that that is the case. Again, I think this is really important, and I hope it'll be comforting for people. This is such an individual experience that everyone, I think, is going to have a slightly different experience. Somebody said to me, well, if that's true, what happens to atheists who don't believe anything happens? And first of all, my answer is I'm not a medium, I'm not a therapist, and I'm not an intuitive. But as a layman, my sense would be if they think there's nothing, maybe there's nothing. Could
Yeah.
be.
Yeah, well, like you said, it's whatever we need it to be for whatever length of time we need it to be in that sense. When time has no meaning, then we get to experience nothing for however long we like, and then if we choose to experience something, then we get to experience that as well. At least that's how I see it and what I feel about it. But yes, I love the sort of ambivalent way that can show up, because it is that openness to all, to allow that expression to unfold in however it needs to. And that's truly the same in this experience as well, though we're sort of more bound to the collective experience. So we experience things together, and that's what creates that sort of slow seeming to manifest aspects of this creation. It doesn't happen nearly as quickly as when we're on the other side, where it's instantaneous. Whatever you feel is what you're going to get.
Right.
So it's beautiful in that sense. Yeah, and then we had another question concerning, like, what are you passionate about at this point, and does it keep you from longing to join Lauren across the veil?
Um, I do not long to join her. I did in the beginning. I begged God to take me and let me be with her. I begged on my knees, begged in part of the deep grief that I was in. But now I know I'm here, and I've known this for a long time. I'm still here for a reason. And part of that reason is I'm a father. We have 4 adult daughters and an adult son. We have 4 grandchildren. Those roles are very, very important to me. That's a very important part of my life. And also the fact that this book came about in the way that it came about and is having the effect, this is not a mainstream book. Okay. We never deluded ourselves into thinking this is some big mainstream book that's going to appeal to everybody. It's a very controversial subject matter. I never thought in a million years that Somewhere in Time would be a huge mainstream movie, nor did I think that What Dreams May Come would be a big mainstream movie. They both have concepts in them that are very challenging for people. It's not how many people you touch. If you make a mainstream film, often what that means is you're very careful that there's nothing in it that's going to upset anybody. You're trying to get the broadest possible audience, and it winds up being often something that everybody can enjoy to a certain extent. But 2 hours later, it's like having Chinese food, you're hungry again. What Dreams May Come, for instance, is a very challenging movie. I mean, it's a very challenging movie with very challenging concepts. And even how that came about, I'll take a couple of minutes because I know people sometimes like hearing behind the scenes things about dreams. This could go on for several hours, but it won't. So in the novel of What Dreams May Come, Annie, the main character, Chris, Annie takes her own life, but the children are still alive. He dies and she takes her own life. Well, immediately I knew there was no way we could do that in a film, because you can't have a character, a mother, who allows her children to become orphans so that she can go to the other side. That is something that most audiences would not accept. So we knew we had to make a change in that, but we had no idea what the change would be. I'm not going to get through the whole story about how I got Ron Bass to do the adaptation of the book. Ron Bass won the Academy Award for Rain Man. He's had about 40 other films made. Ron was a good friend of mine. He was actually Chris Reeve's lawyer when we negotiated the deal together for Somewhere in Time. And Ron became a writer and eventually became the most successful writer in the business in the 80s and 90s. And an event happened where Ron called me one day and said, "Hey, I owe you this. What can I do? Tell me what I can do." And I said, "You can do the adaptation of What Dreams May Come. That's what you can do, because I can't get it set up anywhere." And he was like, "Oh, don't ask me to do that. It's impossible. Nobody's going to pay me to do that. It's too tough to do. I love the book. It's a great love story." I said, "You asked me?" So finally he said, "Okay, set up one pitch." So I did at MGM. And I picked Ron up and we're on the way to the studio. And I said, "So Ron, we haven't had a chance to talk about this. What are you going to do about the suicide?" And he said, "I have no idea what I'm going to do about the suicide. And believe me, Stephen, this is a pitch meeting. They're not going to ask." I'm like, "Okay." So we go into the meeting. Ron is incredible at pitching. And everybody wanted to be in business with Ron at that point. So we get to the end of the meeting and the head of production there, a great guy named Mike Marcus, says, "Ron, this is brilliant. Stephen, I know you've been trying to get this movie going forever. I'm really inclined to do this, but Ron, I have one question for you." And one of the other executives in the room said, "Stephen, your jaw," when Mike, even before he said it, your jaw went down to your knees, because I knew exactly what he was going to say. He said, "What are you going to do about the suicide?" Well, I thought we were done. And then all of a sudden I hear Ron say, "You know what? Here's what we'll do about the suicide. We'll make it that the kids were killed in a car accident before the film even starts. The only thing that keeps Annie around is her love for her husband. When he perishes, there's no reason for her to stay, and she goes to the other side." Now remember, the kids are on the other side too, but they don't have to look like the kids that they looked like when they were alive. When we told Cuba Gooding he was going to play Robin's son, by the way, he jumped up on the desk and said, "I'm in." Okay. So I can use Ron said, "I can use these characters on the other side to have two great reveals of the children. That's what I'm going to do about the suicide." And Mike looked at him and said, "Okay, guys, you have a deal. We're going to develop the script." Ron and I are walking out of the office, and I look at Ron, and literally his hand's shaking. And I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Hell no, I'm not okay. Get me out of here." And I said, "Where did that come from?" He said, "I have no idea where that came from. It just came out of my mouth. I have no idea where it came from." We're walking out of the office, and there's somebody sitting in the waiting room to meet with another executive. And Ron knew who everybody was at that time. And I said, "Hey, Ron, who is that?" And he looked over and he said, "Oh, that's a director from New Zealand named Vincent Ward. He hasn't done anything in the United States yet." 2 years later, Vincent became the director of What Dreams May Come. Now, I tell that story because I know how Ron got that. You guys know how Ron got that. The universe finally said, "Hey, Stephen, you're not the sharpest crayon in the box. It's taken you a long time to get this done, but this needs to get done now. So here's how you get this. Here's how you fix it. Go make the movie. And by the way, there's your director." So when these things happen, you know that you're on the right path. So I always say to people in these situations, just be prepared for the magic, because when you least expect it, it can happen.
Yeah. Be open for the magic. Wait for it. So I have a question myself. There's something very, very, very powerful in this book that, and I don't know if you want to talk about it, because I don't really want to ruin the story or anything like this. So it's about there's a very impactful part about programming and
You can't ruin the story, Lynette. She does.
Yes.
Okay.
So
you can't ruin the story.
So you actually died yourself, and many people don't know that. And when you, let me just put on my glasses here, because this for me, Stephen, this is just so powerful. So you talk about in the early days of television, the 1940s and 50s, the programming was when it's not available for the 24 hours, they would play the Star Spangled Banner, and then a graphic would come up so that you would know that it was the end of programming until the next day. And it was a complex geometric test pattern with a distinctive image of a Native American in full headdress. For anyone watching then, as I often did, that test pattern announced the end of programming.
Yes. And anyone who was around in the 50s and would watch television at night knew that they did not, there were only 3 networks, and they did not broadcast all day and all night. So when they went off the air, they all used that test pattern.
Yes.
When in 2011, I had a heart attack in which my heart stopped 4 different times, twice in the house, once in the ambulance, and once on the way in to have heart surgery. They had to revive me all 4 times. Of course, all kinds of people asked me because, I'd made What Dreams May Come by that time. I'd produced Somewhere in Time by that time. Did you have an experience? And I just demurred to everybody. I told Lauren actually that night in the ICU after my surgery what I had seen. And it was very, very clear to me what it was and why. I saw that test pattern. Now, I was only gone. The first time my heart stopped, the EMTs had already come into the house and were with me when my heart stopped. So they brought me back fast. And each time afterwards, I was with them, and they brought me back quickly. So I wasn't gone for more than 20 seconds, 25 seconds, which my cardiologist later said to Lauren, that is what saved Stephen, because in cardiology, we talk about time is muscle. And the longer you're gone, the harder it is for the muscle of the heart to take over again. So I saw that test pattern. I knew exactly what it meant for me, which is the end of programming. All right, this is now in your hands, Stephen. What are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? The movies you came to make, you've made. So what are you going to do now? It was the Spiritual Cinema Circle. It was our book. It was making a movie out of Neil's book, Conversations with God. And I think it also was a message for everyone else, which is we have stepped beyond the realm that our parents lived in. There was not nearly as much consciousness about consciousness when in the 40s. This whole movement about consciousness started in the 50s. And it started in a place in California called Esalen, where they did the first experiments in talking about this. And then there was this whole raft of books that came out about it in the last 70, 75 years. All that information out there is now out there. I'm sure people who are on this path remember that the Celestine Prophecy came out, Conversations with God came out, all of Wayne Dyer's books came out, Deepak's books came out. There was so much material. How long has it been since you've seen one of those books be a big bestseller? It's been a while. You know why? Because all the information is out there. It's now up for us to take it to the next step.
Yeah. I'm
not going to get into the complications of quantum because I can tell you for sure I don't understand all of the details of quantum. It's a very, very esoteric thing to understand. But I heard somebody once say that if Robert Oppenheimer was still alive, the man who was most responsible for creating the fusion that created the bomb that ended World War II, if Oppenheimer were still alive, he'd be working on some kind of communication device between here and the other side. Because quantum physics has proven that our consciousness does not die. It does not. It's eternal. It can't die. That is a really amazing concept for people and difficult. There are times that we talk about this, Lauren and I, and there are several times when Lauren says, honey, there's things that you can't understand with your human brain that when you're here, you will immediately remember. But I can't communicate them to you now because you just wouldn't be able to grok them. And that's not the nature of our relationship. We're living in a fascinating time in which we now have access to all of these things. And I think it's actually really an exciting time, which means the end of programming from before and the beginning of a whole new ethos in human consciousness.
Yeah. And I should also note that it was on 11/03/11 because this group around Justin, they really understand the numbers, you know.
Oh yeah, and I met Lauren on 11/11, November 11th. That's when we first met. That had a very big, and I'll tell you sometimes, what is that saying? We have it in the book. Voltaire said, God is a comedian playing to an audience that's afraid to laugh.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see things and it's like, oh my goodness, you've got to be kidding. Really? That was how we met, how Lauren and I met. We met because there was a Dreams came out in 1998. In 2003, I was living in Ashland, Oregon, and Lauren was living in a suburb of Portland. And there was a retro theater in Gresham, which is another suburb of Oregon, that was going to do a one-night screening of What Dreams May Come, which had already become quite a cult film. They knew I lived in Oregon. They invited me to come up. It's about a 4-hour drive. And I said, no, I'm busy. I was working on a little movie called Indigo that I also did with Neil about indigo children. And Lauren was invited by a friend of hers. And she's like, I don't want to leave the kids. Her kids were young at that point. She finally agreed to come. She turned around twice to go home, thinking, why am I going to see this? I've already seen it. What am I going to do this for? And I really didn't want to come to Oregon. I come up here because I was too busy. So we're in the movie theater and I see her like from a 3/4 view from behind. And I said, I need to go up and meet this person. And Lauren turned around and looked at me and I looked at her, and we talk about this in the book. Obviously, we talked about this later, not in the moment. It seemed like we stared at each other for 5 minutes and didn't say a word. It was about 10 seconds, probably 5 or 10 seconds. But we both in that moment knew, oh, we did it. We met on the night we were supposed to meet. We figured it out. And then later on, we laughed about it, which is our higher selves deserve a vacation in Tahiti for being able to get us both there and getting through our resistance and things like that. When things are meant to be, they're meant to be. And there was no way that we weren't going to meet that night. I went home knowing that was her. And she went home, called her surrogate mother and said, I met my guy tonight. We had both had, by the way, 2 very difficult marriages before we met each other. We really figured that we needed to have our children with other people so that when we got together, it was later in our lives. So the reason I say this is that I was 57 when I met Lauren. 57. I was done with dating. I was done with marriage. And I always used to say to people, if I date again, which I doubt I'll ever do, I'm certainly not going to date a woman with young children because I raised our kids, my biological kids, on my own for like 13, 14 years. And I was ready for that not to be a part of my life. And of course, I meet Lauren, she has an 11-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son, and who I fall in love with tremendously too. So, love can come at any time. And you never know when that soulmate, that twin flame is out there and you can meet them. And when you do, listen to your heart. Don't listen to this because this just goes around and around and around. Go where your heart goes.
Yes, divine choreography and the synchronicities. And the most beautiful part of all this is that now, with everything ascending, with all the people awakening and opening of that heart, they're going to be conduits. So you're going to be able to have Lauren in all different ways, with people coming around and delivering messages and saying things to you that have deep meaning that only you know. And the beauty of that is it's spreading, everybody's going to be tapping into that and talking about that in the most beautiful, beautiful ways and enjoying it together, and until it just becomes the norm.
And I will tell you, Lauren does get around. As Lynette,
I do know. Yes, yes.
She does get around.
Somebody had a really important question. They wanted to know, what is next for you and Lauren? What do you guys have planned for us?
You know what? I'm not sure I can answer that question. For the moment, it is going and talking about our book and encouraging people that they're not alone, that they can encourage other people that they're not alone, and that this is something that's happening. I have always seen film, and when we had the Spiritual Cinema Circle, we actually had this as our logo. I've always seen film as being the modern day version of a shaman, standing around a campfire, passing down the stories of the culture from one generation to another. And today, that shaman is a filmmaker. And the light from the fire is projected on a screen, whether it's at home or in a movie theater. For many, many years, that was the focus of my life, because I needed to do that. That's part of what I came here to do. I'm going to be 78 next month. Those days are behind me. But what we can do is, with our book, take that into a completely different realm now, to, again, encourage people to talk about this more. And I really hope that people who respond to it will do that. It's not, no, don't go out and promote the book. I'm not saying go promote the book. Promote the idea that we are, as humans, have a very, very distinct advantage in being able to access these parts of our lives. Lauren and her surrogate mom, who was an extraordinary intuitive and medium who taught Lauren so much of it, always said to me, and Lauren still says it to me, honey, everybody can do this. We don't have a special talent. Everybody can do it. You just have to open your heart and be open to the messages and trust them, which is a matter of trusting your heart. So we really hope that we can open people's hearts to this experience and have them be more comfortable about talking about it. I've been so gratified to have received several emails from people with whom I communicated then, who are going to write their own book, who are writing their own book, who have written their own book. And I always say to people, hey, look, Amazon is great for that. We self-published on Amazon because I knew there was no chance in the world that anybody was going to publish our book. It was just not the kind of book that a significant publisher is going to take on. And because my last name is not Kardashian, and I'm not a movie star or a rock star or a movie whatever, that's not where the publishing industry is today. Amazon is terrific for this. They are wonderful to work with once you get your book up there. And then you have to promote it yourself, which basically you have to do as a writer today anyway, again, unless you are a famous movie star or politician or somebody that has a built-in audience out there. It is a great way to get the word out, and it doesn't matter how many people read it. It's how deeply you affect the people that do read it. So if you're going to do that, I urge you to not necessarily think about how people will respond, but speak from your heart and know that if you do, the right people will respond. The right people will be brought to it. It's like you guys got brought to the book so we could do this and I could expose this to more people. The right people will get a hold of it. And if people say you're crazy and stuff, you just have to say, look, I respect your opinion. I can't prove this to you. It's not like gravity. I can't go up to the roof and throw a rock down and say, look, it falls down. That's gravity. This is a whole different thing. This is about faith, and it's about our hearts. and you can't go out and objectively prove it to anybody, but there are people who, in our island of consensual reality here, there are people who will respond to it and will be comforted by it.
Absolutely.
What a gift. Truly such a gift. And it reminds me of another movie on a similar topic of Field of Dreams. And if you build it, they will come, you know. So we have to be ready in that state. We have to be living in our authentic self and open to those experiences in order to have them and to create these relationships and connections with those in this space, and just trust the divine plan, trust how that interweaving works. But if we build it, they will come. If we
and
build
that's a great building, that's a great building block for these kind of movies, Field of Dreams, because when that came out, which is about 30 years ago now, I think, or if not more, that was kind of a new idea. You know, if you build it, they will come. Movies, visionary movies, often do not do well at the box office initially. They sometimes take a while to find their audience. Now, an exception to that, and I know, Lynette, because we spoke about this, this is something you responded to, I know, in the book, about what is real and what is not real, what's reality and, you know, what isn't. So the Wachowskis, the two people who wrote the Matrix series of films, were fascinated by that concept. Fascinated by that concept. Well, what if life is the dream, and when we pass to the other side of the veil, we wake up? What if this is an elaborately projected illusion? Quantum science is dealing with that as well. So they knew they couldn't just do that in a movie because they couldn't get the money for it. So they built this huge, epic science fiction, fascinating movie with Keanu, which had state-of-the-art visual effects and all kinds of fascinating, interesting things. But at the heart of it was, well, you can take the blue pill and stay here and just pretend this is all fine, or you can take the red pill and then you'll see how far down the rabbit hole goes. They got it across in a film. And there are filmmakers out there today, I know, that are doing the same kind of thing or trying to do the same kind of thing. And I hope more of those things get made. And I hope we have more inspiring, uplifting movies, because, you know, yeah, as human beings, we can be very greedy, very cruel, very mean, very selfish, very thoughtless. Yes, those are parts of us. But we're also a really beautiful species that consciously loves and consciously forgives. And you don't see that much in the media anymore. If it bleeds, it leads. That's basically what our media is all about right now. And in film, you can take that to another place. In books, you can take that to another place where we are more beautiful than I think most media would like to think we are. The comedian Bill Maher, a few years ago, had an open message for the folks who run Hollywood, in which he said, hey, look, guys, I just want to ask you a question. Do you think that every once in a while you can make a movie that doesn't make me want to take a bath with a toaster? We need more movies that don't want to make people think, oh my God, I'm so awful, I should just leave the planet. We have those sides, but we're also a beautiful, beautiful species.
Yeah,
amazing.
So wonderfully said. Yeah, so we've got a dear friend of both mine and Lynette, Lila, here joining us, and she's got a question to share with you as well. So
hi, how are you?
Lila. You're muted, Lila.
Lovely to meet you, and thanks for having me. And yeah, a couple of comments. I was just going to speak to what you just spoke to there, which was that exactly the importance of having these films. And I loved how you put it, that it's like today's modern shamanism, because it's so true. These Hollywood films or films in general but I think it's going more, you know, with the Matrix and those are, it's going more in that direction. But it's just been so important for us to get this information downloaded in this way, and to have that hope and the belief, the faith, right, in things that lift us up and inspire us versus these things that drag us down and yeah, are bloody and gory and all of those things. So I just wanted to speak to that. I totally agree with you. And I wanted to share my experience of seeing the film back in the day. The year that it came out, I saw it. And I was instantly attracted to it before I even knew what it was about, by the colors and the art in it. And it was like I was remembering something. So, you know, what, 30 years ago or so, it was so incredibly profound for me to receive that film and then work with the thousands of people that I went on to work with, some of them in deep states of grief because of death. I'm a body worker of 30 years, and I just happened to attract many, many receivers to me in the time period after, you know, experiencing a sudden death of their loved one. And I would always use your work, the work of Dr. Brian Weiss, Many Lives, Many Masters, and then more lately, the book of Eliza Medhus, My Son in the Afterlife, which all have, you know, similar information. And it just, when they were in such that place of darkness, it was just such a gift. So I just want you to know that through my own life, thousands of people have received that from my words of sharing that information and sending them, here's a little, you know, snippet of the trailer or whatever, like, please go and have some hope when you're in this extreme darkness. And so thank you, just thank you so much for having that heart space, being in that heart space. And thank you, of course, to her too. Just your love, you know, it's so clear in the film and in the book how beautifully connected you are. What a beautiful lives long, right, connection that you have here. I'm curious if you've worked with the Destiny of Souls, Michael Newton work, where he talks about the life between life work. I heard you mention that. I'd be interested to hear, is it in the same realm of thinking that you're sort of like a spirit in a soul world, and that's how you and her made the agreement of who was going to leave the earthly plane first?
You know, first of all, it's a wonderful question that I'm not sure I have. I don't want to vamp and dance around it. I'm not sure I have a sufficient answer for it.
Okay.
But I do want to say to you that I so appreciate what you've said, and I'm so glad that Dreams touched you the way that it did. It's really hard to express the gratitude I feel, the awe I feel when I talk to someone who got it. Because we were ripped to shreds by critics. Critics, except for two main critics, just blistered the movie because it is so much a movie of the heart. Interestingly enough, there were two great critics back then who had a very, very powerful effect in the business, Siskel and Ebert. And Gene Ebert said the movie was one of the great achievements in film history. He was one of the few critics who got it. I knew Gene. Gene had never given me a good review on any film that I had ever made. And he used to laugh about it when I saw him. And I would say to him, hey, Gene, are you ever going to give me a good review? And he said, are you ever going to make a good movie? I mean, he was a great guy. Well, when I saw that review, I tried to get a hold of him and found out that he was dying from brain cancer. And I realized immediately the reason that he responded to it so well is because that's where he was going to be. we also had, I have to make this story short. A man living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, called the distributor right when the film was coming out and said, my daughter is 17 years old and she's dying. And she really wants to see this movie, but she can't go to the theater. She's in a hospice bed in the living room. Fortunately, the people at Polygram called me and said, what do you think? And I said, this is why we made the, this is why we made the movie, okay? So there was a lot of discussions, but they agreed to have a video brought to her house. The messenger was told to stay there while they watched the movie, because this is before the movie came out. When the messenger showed up and saw what the situation was, the messenger just gave the father his phone number and said, listen, when you're done, call me and I'll come back and get this. Well, the father wound up calling me eventually, getting my number and calling me. And he said, look, Amanda, her name is Amanda, was dying. And she saw the film. Honestly, Stephen, I didn't watch the film. I watched Amanda. Mm. And when it got to the painted world scene, I saw her become completely peaceful. Mm. And the next day she asked me to take her out to a park, which I did, to see the fall colors. This was in October. And she said to me, Dad, when I die tomorrow, you'll know where I am. So, gosh, I haven't told this story in a long time. So Chuck said to me, look, I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to watch that movie on my own, but I want to tell you, it changed the last 2 days of my daughter's life. And for that, you should always be grateful. And I'm always really, really affected by the people who, like you, who are so touched by dreams that you shared it with other people, that you shared the message of it with other people, and that you were so touched by the colors. Because Vincent, the director, is also, and still is, quite an accomplished painter. Mm-hmm. He went to art school. He's had exhibits all over the world. And the whole idea of wet paint was not in the book. It was Vincent's vision for what this should look like. And he said, Robin will be the only definable human in a world of wet paint. I remember saying, that's an incredible idea, Vincent. Can you do that? He said, hell yes, I can do that. And I said, do you know how? And he said, hell no, but we'll figure it out. And eventually we did. So anyway, thank you for loving the film. It is so meaningful for me to hear that. I really appreciate you taking the time to share that.
Thank you for hearing it. And, you know, you said you hadn't told that story in a long time. And I think that the timing is perfect, because maybe we can really get this way of going of think of the implications of bringing that into near-death work. You know, I've trained as a death doula also, and, you know, to really have that as sort of part of, you know, when everybody's going around like their heads are cut off and they're in that shock and trauma of losing somebody, to if, like this beautiful woman, if they have the space to receive it before you pass over, oh my goodness, like that's just, thank you so much for sharing. That was so moving to hear about that, and to just to nerd out on this is so powerful for me, because I'll share with all of you that I worked with Robin Williams, and we discussed this film at one point, because he said when he first met me, I think we worked together about 6 to 7 years. So, but it was when we first met, he said, so which one's your favorite movie? And I said, What Dreams May Come. And he looked at me and he said, really? And I said, yeah. And I was like, and Jumanji is, I love that one too, but for different reasons, because it just connected me to my little nieces and nephews. And he said, and he looked at me, he said, don't tell anyone but mine too.
And Robin, speaking of Lauren making the rounds, I know that Robin has made the rounds. Since he crossed over. Somebody once said to me that they were in touch and said, "What is it like over there?" And he said, "Watch the movie."
Yeah, I can
I'll
see
tell you
that.
what, and then I know we have to kind of bring this to a wrap here in a minute, but I'll tell you another cute story about Robin. So when we offered Robin the movie, it had been made very clear to us by Polygram, who financed it. It was going to be an expensive movie, because the effects had to be created the way they were. No one knew how to do it at the time. The effects budget was going to be huge. They knew they needed to get a big star. Robin had just done Good Will Hunting. And we were told, if you get Tom Hanks or you get Robin Williams, we'll make the movie. If not, we won't. And I've been trying for 17 or 18 years by this time. Tom Hanks was committed for like 3 films in a row. So Robin was the only one we could go to who we could actually get the movie made. So we submitted the script to him. Sometime later, a week or so later, I got a phone call from his agent saying, "Robin would like you guys to go to San Francisco," where he was living at the time. "And he'd like you and the director to come up and talk." So we were like, "Vincent, this is at least a good sign that he's interested, let's go." So we went. I'll never forget this. We're sitting in his living room, and Robin walks into the room and says, "Guys, I got 2 things to tell you. Number 1, this is going to be my next movie. Number 2, I'm going to play all the parts." And of course, we all started to laugh. And he said, "What are you laughing at? I'm serious. I'm going to play Annie. I'm going to play the kids. I want to play every part in the movie." And then he finally said, "No, I'm just kidding. I actually want to do this." It's the kind of person that Robin was. But anyway, thank you again for your comments about it. It's very meaningful to me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for doing it and just having the courage to do it and the fortitude to be here. I loved it when the person asked what's next. And it's like, I can't really answer that question because it's clear that your spirit is really in the now. And we can't really know what's going to be in the future or to have an agenda or plans about what we're going to be doing. And that's the way that the team plays, Lynette says, comes around in such a beautiful synchronistic reality, just like this conversation right here. So thank you for being here at this point in time, being willing. I mean, you could easily not get up and have a Zoom call with 3 people that you don't really know, so we're so grateful, and it's just so fun to nerd out on this. And yeah, just as I've said, so special to me with having such a past with this specific film and your book. Thank you so much.
I'm actually really thrilled to have been here, and I'll go back to when we talked about Sammy Davis Jr. and the refrigerator opening and the light coming on. Somebody wants to talk to me about this movie. Believe me, I'm here with both feet and my entire heart, my entire soul. And I thank you for your comments about this, because I won't forget that soon. It's been a while since I've talked to somebody that had those responses to dreams, and I so much appreciate you telling me that. And Lynette and Justin, thank you so much for doing this with me. I appreciate it. And for all of you out there, whether you get our book or not, I hope that you will feel comforted in knowing that you are not alone, that we are really beautiful spiritual beings, and that love never dies. And if you do read the book, this will have meaning to you on the last page. I hope you find your Shangri-La.
Such a gift.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, Lynette, did you have any closing comments?
I love you. I just want to tell you I love you. I love you all, but I love you, Stephen. And I'm going to tell a lot of people and share this book with a lot of people. I watched What Dreams May Come with a little baby in my arms, bawling my eyes out, and I'm still crying. I'm crying listening to you talk about it. And it just overjoys me to have you today. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm really, really honored by this. It's wonderful to talk to people that get it. And it's very, very heartwarming and encouraging for me too. And when you ask me, well, what are you going to do? I'm going to continue this journey for as long as I can. as long as as long as I can breathe, and as long as there are people that are interested in hearing more of this, how more of this stuff came about, I'm going to keep doing this for the rest of my life. And then I'm going to rejoin Lauren, and I know time is different over there, but I plan to have about 100-year hug.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
sounds
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for doing this. I really have enjoyed this. It's been very meaningful for me.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Thank you to all of you as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. We really appreciate it, and sending so much love to you, Stephen, and to Lauren. Thank you for joining, Lila. Thank you, Lynette. This has been amazing. So really appreciate it. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, wherever you are. Take care, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Justin.